The Cold War spawned magnificent planes, like the SR-71 and the Fairchild Republic A-10 Warthog. However, it also produced some of the worst planes ever to leave the drawing board. Hey everyone, how are you doing today? Before we proceed with this video, do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Kindly click on the notification bell to get updates on our exciting content. During the Cold War, strange aircraft, such as Avro Canada's modern-day UFO, Northrop's Tacit Blue stealth plane that appeared like it was built by a 3-year-old child, and the strange Thundersceptor, with its booster rocket motors that was obsolete before it even took to the runway, were all created. The somewhat normal-looking XF-84 Thunderscreech was possibly the worst of all. While it appeared to be normal, it did not sound like it. The Thunderscreech was so loud that it frequently made its crew sick. The plane's sound waves were so powerful that they might knock people down, and even caused a seizure in an engineer working on the plane. The Thunderscreech's infamous moniker comes from the enormous noise it generated. It still keeps the world record for the world's loudest aircraft ever built. Today, we'll find out why this atrocity was created. It's nearly impossible to describe how the plane sounded here, because the Thunderscreech's terrible noise was created by shock waves projected outwards by the odd propeller design. It's impossible to replicate via digital audio. The Thunderscreech was a one-of-a-kind plane born out of a one-of-a-kind need during the early days of jet engine development. The Navy required aircraft with short takeoff runs in order to take off from aircraft carrier runways and gain a competitive advantage near enemy territory. This necessitated climb performance, in which jets were not especially strong at the time. The propeller planes outperformed the others. This means that the propeller design allows these planes to take off and ascend faster from aircraft carriers with significantly shorter runways. The Republic XF-84H Thunderscreech, introduced in 1955, was an effort to tackle the problems by mounting a short, high-speed propeller on a jet. The XF-84H earned its nickname because the prop tips hit supersonic and stayed there as soon as the engine achieved operating speed, making it the loudest airplane ever built. The Thunderscreech was a well-intentioned attempt to combine the finest features of propeller and jet-powered aircraft, but it terminated at being one of the most wasteful, unpleasant, and dangerous aircraft ever built. By June 1945, the United States Navy had begun to investigate the turboprop, or prop jet, as a potential solution to the performance issues that plagued early jets. The power output of a turboprop is regulated by modifying the pitch, or angle of attack, of the propeller blades, which is essentially a gas turbine engine that drives a propeller. A turboprop's power is faster and easier to manage than that of a jet, and it consumes less fuel. The Navy preferred the T-38 gas turbine engine, which Allison began constructing in 1944 and delivered 2,249.9 shaft horsepower (SHP) at 14,300 RPM, with a 6.8 to 1 reduction gear ratio, bringing the propeller RPM down to around 2,100 RPM. The T-40, Allison's double-turbine engine, proved even more appealing to the Navy. The T-40 combined two T-38 gas turbines, installed side by side and linked to a drive shaft via a common reduction gear, to produce up to 7,500 horsepower. The T-40 had the ability to drive contra-rotating propellers that counteracted torque, making the plane easier to control at low speeds. By turning off one of the two turbines in flight and feathering its prop, the cruise range may be considerably increased. The Navy purchased two tail-sitting VTOL fighters, a twin-engine carrier-based bomber, a single-engine carrier-based attack aircraft, and a 4-engine flying boat, all based on the T-40. The two VTOL fighters, Lockheed XFV-1 Salmon and Convair XFY-1 Pogo, were both fundamentally flawed and never progressed past the prototype stage. The turboprop improvements of the piston-engine North American AJ Savage and Douglas AD Skyraider were the two carrier-based projects. The T-40 engines, on the other hand, proved to be so unstable in both circumstances that neither plane was suitable. As a result, some 20 years after scrapping its intended successor, the A-2D Skyshark piston-engine Skyraiders were nonetheless flying combat missions over Vietnam. According to Allison's official history, Power of Excellence, the T-40 turboprop was a behemoth and a mechanical bogey. that had been earmarked to production before it was ready. The main issues were with the reduction gears and propeller control systems, both of which were just insufficient. The T-40 was quickly losing favor with the Navy by the early 1950s. Propeller-driven planes, on the other hand, could accelerate faster and handle better at lower speeds than their jet-powered counterparts. The US Air Force, on the other hand, opted to use the T-40 to see whether it could construct an airplane that combined a jet's supersonic speed with a prop-driven plane's acceleration. The XF-84H was manufactured by Republic Aviation on the airframe of its successful F-84F Thunderscreech jet fighter as a testbed for supersonic air screws at Wright-Patterson's Air Force Base's Propeller Laboratory. The new jet was supposed to be a collaborative effort between the Air Force and the Navy, with one prototype produced for the Navy and two for the Air Force. The Navy must have opted out of the XF-84H program early on because just two Air Force prototypes were built, and the aircraft does not appear to have ever been given a Navy designation. The Air Force commissioned Aero Products, Curtiss-Wright, and Hamilton Standard to develop a high-performance propeller. Only Aero Products came through in the end, with a unique 12-foot diameter, 3-bladed air screw with unusually wide, square-tipped blades. The propeller was planned to spin at a constant 3,000 RPM, which meant that the blades' outer 12 to 18 inches were supersonic, with the tips traveling at Mach 1.18. Although the XF-84H had a superficial resemblance to the F-84F Thunderstreak, the two aircraft shared very few components. As with the RF-84F Thunderflash photo reconnaissance version of the Republic fighter, the air intakes were relocated to the wing roots. The XF-84H's fuselage had to be broadened to house the T-40 twin-turbine engine, which was mounted behind the cockpit, in addition to the prop and a larger spinner added to its nose. A pair of long extension shafts passed through the cockpit, supported by a slew of bearings, and drove the single propeller via a reduction gear. To clear the prop wash, the horizontal tail surfaces were raised to a position on top of the tail fin, and a vertical shark fin was installed behind the cockpit to improve stability. The complete XF-84H was so different from the production F-84 that the Air Force planned to call it the F-106 at first. The F-106 designation was eventually reassigned to Convair's supersonic delta-winged interceptor, known as the Delta Dart. The XF-84H included a retractable ram air turbine that was designed to automatically deploy into the slipstream whenever the landing gear was extended, providing additional electrical and hydraulic power. It was the first aircraft with this capability, which was fortunate, given that 11 of its 12 flights ended in engine failures. In addition, the XF-84H was the only turboprop with an afterburner. The T-40 engine's normal output was 5,850 horsepower, but the Air Force expected the afterburner to increase it to 7,400 horsepower, allowing the plane to fly at supersonic speeds if the prop was feathered. However, before the afterburner could be lit in flight, the test program was cancelled. The XF-84H prototypes were plagued by the engine, drive shaft, and gearbox problems, but their most notable flaw was the ear-splitting roar generated by their supersonic propeller blades. Because the company's previous aircraft had been named Thunderbolt, Thunderjet, Thunderstreak, and Thunderflash, it was only natural that the XF-84H would be dubbed the Thunderscreech, albeit unofficially. The Thunderscreech's engine warming up howl was said to be audible from more than 20 miles away. Because the engine's noise prevented aircraft controllers from hearing anything over their radios, it had to be tested in a remote area of Edwards Air Force Base. Only 2 civilian test pilots flew the Screech, and one of them quit after just one flight, telling the tackle-size Republic project engineer, "You aren't big enough, and there aren't enough of you to get me back in that thing." Hank Beard, the other, flew the XF-84H on 11 flights, 10 of which ended in premature or emergency landings. "When you got it out roughly 400 knots, it became a handful," Baird said. "The propeller governor would begin to surge, and the plane would begin to roll violently. In fact, the entire plane was attempting to torque itself around the prop shaft, rotating left while the prop spun right." The XF-84H was first flown on July 22, 1955, and While it had excellent acceleration, it quickly proved to be impractical. The plane was clearly unsuited to combat, because the engine took a full half hour to warm up. Mechanical issues with the prop pitch gearing, as well as an in-flight vibration caused by the 18-foot-long propeller shafts, were the most serious issues. Over a 15-month period, the two planes logged less than 10 hours of total flight time. The XF-84H was capable of 670 miles per hour, which would have made it the fastest prop-driven aircraft ever built, but it never went faster than 450 miles per hour. Instead, the Tupolev Tu-95, dubbed Bear by NATO, holds the record. The Tu-95 cruises at 544 miles per hour and can reach 574 miles per hour thanks to four 14,800 HP turboprop engines. One of the two Thunderscreech prototypes worked as a gate guard at a Bakersfield, California airport for many years. It was moved to the National Museum of the United States Air Force in 1992, where it is now on display. If this video was insightful for you, then go on and like this video. Please, kindly subscribe to our channel and click on the bell button for more of our updates.